and I had these like deep thoughts about death and purpose of life. And I was thinking to myself, like, if I died tonight, right now, what would happen? And that thought terrified me because I was thinking my soul is gone, whatever that is. And then I just blip into nothing, and the rest of eternity, I don't exist. And I was kind of contemplating that stark reality, and it terrified me, and I had no answer for it.
Love God, love people, love people, love people. It's the AC Podcast. For the love of God, love people.
Hello, listeners. Welcome to the AC Podcast. My name is Troy, and I am your host for today's episode. Happy New Year. We pray that all of you had an incredible holiday weekend. I know I did. I think I have a greater understanding this year as to why so many New Year's resolutions are to go to the gym, because I did not hold back this year when it came to snacking. But enough about me. Today, I'm super excited to invite one of our guests onto the show, someone that you may have seen if you've been following us on Instagram, but none other than Max Chadwick, our new filmmaker. I won't say videographer because I don't want to offend you, because you guys get sensitive about that. Ladies and gentlemen, Max Chadwick, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you so much for having me. It's weird being on the other side of this.
I can imagine. But as you can see, for those of you who may be watching this on YouTube, for those who are having it on audio, unfortunately, you're not getting to see Max's super dope setup that is putting mine to absolute shame. Like, he's even got a glass of water in the background. I have a globe, though, so people know that I travel. But he is an amazing setup. Max is an incredible filmmaker. Getting to see already how he has upgraded the podcast on YouTube has been incredible. We've been praying pretty heavily. But just to give you guys a little bit of background on Max, Max went through the Diploma of Motion Picture Arts program at Capilano University, where he developed a love for creating and sharing films while also cultivating professional skills in the film and TV industry. Max has also produced many video and photo projects with Northview Community Church, and you can often spot him at local events with camera in hand. I won't keep reading your bio, but Max, welcome to the show, man. Thank you so much for joining us.
Can't wait.
Yeah. So, listeners, Max joined us. How long has it been since you started with us at AC?
I think it's been about a month.
It's been a month. Okay. Yeah. So you joined us at like the busiest end of the year time possible, and I would love to know, just for our listeners again, like, how did you first get into filmmaking? Before we get into the old AC stuff and all the things coming up in the new year, like, how did you get into filmmaking?
Well, I've always been a movie lover. I guess I kind of started when I was in school, like elementary school, high school. We'd always get the option for when we're working on projects to either write an essay or make a short film, and every single time I chose the short film because it's like, first of all, I hated writing essays, and it just seemed like the easier option. And plus, it was way more fun. And so I always opted for that. And then, near the end of high school, we had the conversation with it's like the next steps counselors, thinking about where we want to go after high school and like what we want to do with our careers. And I had no idea what I wanted to do. Like, all I knew at the time was I was playing volleyball, and I didn't like doing academics. And so Fair. I started looking around. I was like, what do I like to do? And I immediately thought, well, I like to make movies. I guess that could be a career option, but I never really thought about it before. But I ended up looking into local colleges and seeing who had film programs and, what options were available to me. And I ended up finding Capilano University in North Vancouver. They have a film program, and they also had a volleyball team. And so I really wanted to play volleyball in post-secondary, and reached out to them. They ended up giving me a scholarship to play volleyball.
Sick.
Yeah, and I also got accepted into like the film program. But it's actually kind of funny. I ended up doing the wrong program at first.
Okay, so that's why you put for those of you listeners like who are listening, you didn't see he put air quotes, and I was like, what do you mean film program?
I did a visual effects course by accident. I signed up for that, and I quit after about a month because I realized that you have to have a lot of artistic ability to do that. Yeah. For those of you that don't know, visual effects are like CGI and like computer graphics for films. And I thought that was just like the film program, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that'd be a fun one to figure out pretty quickly.
Yeah, and for someone who hasn't used a pen or pencil or drawn something for probably 10 years, that was not the program for me.
Right. Okay. That's awesome. When I was in university, I will say I definitely only went there to play soccer. Much very similar. I was like, okay, I really like doing soccer. I care about music, but at the same time, I did not go to school for music in any way, shape, or form. I just wanted to play soccer. And when I was I ended up going to 3 different colleges. I did one in California. I did one in Nipawin, Saskatchewan, a small Bible college. And then when I finally moved out to Winnipeg, that was when I was going to finish off my degree. But I didn't know what I wanted to do as a minor. But then there was this girl I liked who ended up becoming my wife, who was in this ESL teaching program, like TESOL. And I was like, I guess I'm going to go into TESOL. And I learned pretty quickly. I was like, I have no desire to be in here, but she's in here. So I guess I'm going to stick it out. So I can definitely understand university going potentially into courses for either by mistake or the wrong reason. But that's awesome, man. So when it comes to filmmaking, did you like some of the early things that you were making? What was the kind of stuff that you wanted to make?
Well, I mean, growing up, one of my favorite TV programs was Departures. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
Departures.
It was like a travel documentary following 2 guys who basically just quit their jobs and started traveling the world, and they made a TV program out of it with their one friend who was a cinematographer. And I would watch that every morning before I went to school, and it was just like my favorite program because something about the beauty of, it showed those people's personalities, and it was just kind of like them in the raw moments, and it kind of was like a natural storytelling where they didn't have a set goal when they went to a country. It just kind of, they went there, they filmed it, and whatever came along is what they captured. Yeah. And some of the best moments I've ever seen in TV was from that show. And it was just like, it was all just natural human interaction and making friends with the locals and wanting to try fun stuff. And they ended up making this compelling story, and it really blew me away. And so I've always kind of had that like in the back of my mind of like, that's something that I want to do.
That's cool. That's really cool. As a avid movie lover, what would you say is your favorite movie style? Or I guess let's start simple. What would you say is, I want to know what your favorite movie is and favorite movie series.
That's usually a hard question for people, but for me, I've thought about it a lot.
Okay.
I actually keep a note in my phone of my favorite movies. My favorite movie of all time is Warrior with Tom Hardy.
Warrior.
Yeah,
okay, I don't think I've seen it.
It's a sports movie about MMA, which usually is like, I'm not super interested in that sort of stuff, but
yeah.
wait,
maybe I have seen it.
Yeah, 2 brothers, they get entered into a fighting competition against each other.
Yeah.
And then it's kind of just like their family drama. And
I've seen it. Yeah. That's
I love
awesome.
that movie.
Yeah, that's a great movie. And Tom Hardy, man, that dude is an unbelievably diverse actor. Like you can't typecast him. He can do it. He can do literally anything.
Yeah.
He plays, I watched, if anyone who's watched a show called Peaky Blinders, he plays an unreal, I would call him more of an anti-hero on there than a villain, but he's pretty great. My favorite movie series, I know for a fact, is Lord of the Rings. Like the Lord of the Rings series, from the way they filmed it to the acting, the costumes, I believe it is unmatched. Some people will go and say Harry Potter. I'm like, no, because Harry Potter, those actors got better. Lord of the Rings, they were always amazing all the way through, and I will fight to the death. Online, maybe. No, I'm just kidding. But no, that's awesome, man. So we've got that. We've spoken about your favorite movies, but I'd love to know, when it comes to you using like your filmmaking ability in ministry, like how did that kind of come about? Like, did you grow up in a Christian home? Was it something that you were always kind of exposed to? How did that happen?
Well, I actually grew up in a non-Christian home.
Okay.
So I was an atheist for most of my life.
Really?
My parents were both not Christian. My mom was raised in like a Buddhist agnostic household. Her side of the family's Japanese. Yeah, my father was like agnostic. So I was kind of raised without any kind of faith at all. And in fact, I would kind of go to the polar opposite side of that. And I consider myself like a pretty staunch atheist. I really enjoyed watching like debates and videos on YouTube of like atheist crushes Christian, makes Christian look foolish. And I was really into that sort of thing because I've always had like a really deep interest in apologetics, which I didn't know at the time, and like theology and those sorts of things.
Okay. So, man, now we got to go down that road. So I want to know how you came to Christ.
Yeah, I mean, it's a long story, but I ended up playing volleyball in high school, and I was on a really terrible team. I mean, sorry guys, but my mom was the coach, and I was the only person who really wanted to be there. And then it was just I dragged along all my friends to play with me, so I had a team. We went to Heritage Park Secondary in Mission,
Okay.
and
Shout out Heritage Park for being awful.
we ended up playing in a lot of like games against MEI. Mennonite Educational Institute. Yeah. And they always just whooped us every single time. And I got kind of tired of it. And I was like, man, I want to be on a good team. That didn't help with my whole worldview because I just imagine like, oh, these Christian guys, they just keep beating us. Like, what's going on there? Eventually, I ended up meeting some of the MEI guys through like playing club volleyball and out of the school. I started to realize that, these guys aren't weirdos. They aren't like crazy Bible thumpers, which is what I would have thought of them before. I was like, how could you believe in something so crazy? And like, that's so primitive. Like we're in 2015 or whatever year it was. So I started to meet them outside of school, playing club volleyball, and I became really good friends with them. And then I started to notice this difference between my lifestyle at public school in Mission and their lifestyle, because I started spending more time with them. It just kind of attracted me to like figure out more about their lives and like what they believe. They wanted to play sports and they wanted to get together all the time and just hang out, with a group of friends. And my other school was getting more interested in, living for the weekend and getting into drugs and alcohol and chasing just like some of the wrong things. And I was never really into that. And so I ended up just talking to my parents one day and I was like, hey, don't say no, but like, what are the odds that I go to MEI next semester? I think this was the summer before.
Interesting.
Which is crazy, going from a free public education to, kind of an expensive private education.
Yeah.
And to my surprise, my mom was like, oh, I'll think about it. And then, a week later, I ended up getting an interview and then accepted. And it was just kind of a roller coaster from there.
Wow.
And then I started playing with the guys on their team, getting to know people, seeing kind of behind the scenes, going to chapel at school, getting a Bible, starting to read it. And I became a lot more fascinated in the Bible specifically because before, you look at the Bible and it's like, oh, it's an antiquated book. It's from thousands of years ago. People just believe whatever's in there. Like, all the things you hear about the Bible from the other perspective.
Can I trust the Bible?
Exactly. I actually started listening to, I don't know if at that time the Apologetics Canada Podcast was going.
So yeah, they would have been going by then.
So I might have been listening to the podcast, and I went to a couple of conferences actually, and that was when I was kind of in my early budding years of faith, just starting to get to know it. That was a really important time for me, I think, because I had all these deep questions. I remember actually one night lying awake. This was in high school. I wake up at like 3 a.m. and I'm just sitting there, and I had these like deep thoughts about death and purpose of life. And I was thinking to myself, like, if I died tonight, right now, what would happen? And that thought terrified me because I was thinking, my soul is gone, whatever that is. And then I just blip into nothing, and the rest of eternity, I don't exist. And I was kind of contemplating that stark reality, and it terrified me, and I had no answer for it. Then I started to see the other side, going to these conferences and doing my research, and I just had an internal struggle that I couldn't get past.
That's crazy, man. See, there's something about stories of people coming to faith, and I wouldn't necessarily like coming into being an adult. There's something about it, especially when you didn't have that in your home, right? But it's really interesting how your mom. It sounds like it was specifically your mom was like open to you being in the midst of that stuff, and so when the time really came, like, was it Like, okay, God, I'm going to give you my life? Was it like a youth event? Was it just at home by yourself? Like, what was that? What did that look like?
I spend a lot of time by myself. So a lot of these deep questions happened when I was just like alone with my thoughts.
Okay.
I'm naturally an introvert, and I actually enjoy being alone all the time.
Yeah.
I think the moment was also lying in bed, thinking about these questions, thinking about everything that I've been learning. And it kind of came to a crossroads where I started to believe in these things that I was reading. And I saw the truths about life in the Bible. And, well, this is obviously true. Like, I look around me, I look at how people are acting, I look at the state of the world, I look at how this all affects me. And I'm like, this is obviously true, but this is crazy. Like,
Yeah.
what the Bible is teaching, it's insane. It's doesn't go along with my worldview. And I came to the crossroads where I just had to decide. I was like, okay, either I can fully commit to this and, give my life to God, or I can turn away from it and just kind of consider it a bump in the road and keep going the way that I was going. I prayed about it, and I said to God, I said, Lord, if this is true, and if you're real, and the Bible is your word, then I pray you just reveal that to me, make it clear, and I'll give my life to you, and I won't look back. I prayed that, went to bed. I woke up the next morning, and it was weird. Like, it's totally surreal. I felt like a new person.
Wow.
I woke up and I saw the world differently. I was thinking about, every time I interacted with people, I was considering things that I hadn't really thought about before. I was having new thoughts about things, and just kind of the world opened up a little bit, and that weirded me out.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, it's like that passage that it's in Romans 12:2. It's like, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And it was really, that's what I kind of see that moment was for you, right? It was like, okay, God, I need something tangible. And I guess for someone like you who it was, saying that you were a deep thinker, you were really thinking about a lot of different apologetic arguments and conversations, and for you to wake up and automatically see the world different and start considering things, I can imagine that would be it's like, oh, wait a minute, because I knew how I felt about this yesterday, and wait, why do I even consider that today? It's really encouraging hearing that, and I think I've said this before on the podcast, is I've found in recent years you don't hear enough about people's coming to faith testimonies, especially people who didn't grow up in the church. It's almost like the church in a lot of ways has wrestled with believing it still happens. There's been a lot of discouragement because of different, let's say, ministry leaders or churches falling out of favor, making these major mistakes, and ultimately watching ministries and churches crumble and people be deeply affected. How has your faith affected your family? Like, where's your family at with your faith now?
It's funny, when I first became a Christian, my parents were shocked, first of all. They're like, how could you believe in something like this? What did they teach you over in that school? You're getting indoctrinated. Like, what's going on?
Right.
But, over time, they kind of slowly got used to it. At Thanksgiving and Christmas dinners, and whenever the family got together, they would just kind of, it would come time to say grace or something. I mean, we never did that, but they would look at me and they'd be like, okay, everybody. Yeah, they're like, everybody listen up. Max is going to say grace. And I was just looking at them like, what? We have never done this before. What's going on? And so I guess they kind of used me as like a medium between them and God. It was like, Max is a Christian in the family. Now we're good with God because he's going to pray for us and bless this meal. And, over time, they warmed up to it. And now, they're totally fine with it. I'd like to think that they are seeing the differences in me as a person, because I feel like I've changed a lot since I first became a Christian, and my priorities changed. And so I'm hoping that they're seeing that. I've tried to have conversations with them here and there. But, as talking to the family goes, sometimes it can go interesting directions.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I get that. Yeah. I'd be interested to know for you, what was it like once that happened, getting connected with a local church? Did you still kind of have apprehensions towards like the physical church body, or was it easy for you to transition? Well,
when I first gave my life to God, I was like grade 12 high school. So the transition from there was going to college and playing volleyball. And, it was such a huge difference in like where I thought my life was going that I went from, the private Christian school where it was, MEI is kind of known as a bubble, where it's a safe place and there's not really a lot of like persecution happening there.
Mm-hmm.
And then going to university to Capilano, which is probably, I'd say, one of the most progressive universities in BC.
Yeah.
My first day of film school when I was there was the professor literally started the class by saying, okay, everyone, hi, I just want to introduce myself. And I want to start by saying that God is dead. Like, we don't believe in that in this classroom. And if you're not okay with that, then you just have to be okay with it.
No way.
Yeah, it was literally out of the movie God's Not Dead. Like, that happened.
No way. I don't want to get stuck on this, but that's just the weirdest thing.
Yeah.
Like, imagine I was a teacher in a public school, and I got up and I said, "Hey, everybody, I just want you to know that before we get started, that Buddha's not real. We don't believe in that here." And then it just carried, like, it would never fly. It would never fly. It would never be acceptable, not just as a teacher, but as an individual. I'm like, what? Wait, this is how you introduce yourself? That's so odd.
Yeah. And so,
what was that like for you? Like,
I mean, I was a new Christian. And so as soon as I heard that, I was like, oh no, what did I sign up for?
Yeah.
This is going to be awful. And I was scared to talk about faith, to mention that I was a Christian to anyone. Because it's, first year of university, you're meeting people and you're trying to learn, what the thing that's going to be your career for the rest of your life. And I immediately saw the obvious downside of being a Christian in that moment.
The persecution. Yeah.
And so it totally, I really didn't take my faith seriously until like a couple of years into university. And when I realized that like, this is so much better than whatever I can get from this university and whatever problems come from it.
Yeah. That's awesome. Was there any level of, I guess, kind of discipleship that happened for you, whether it was in university or through a local church, that kind of thing, that where someone was like, hey, Max, like, kind of help walk you along, or was it some of your friends or anything of that nature?
I don't know. I would say it was more just seeing people in the church. I was always an observer, like even before I was a Christian, that I would learn a lot of things by seeing how other people act and listening to people talk and, watching apologetic stuff. And so I'd say I was definitely guided more by that. I didn't really have like a specific person to like answer these deep questions, at least like until several years later. Yeah.
Man, that just, I don't know about you listeners or viewers, but stories like this just really encourages me again in knowing who the Holy Spirit is, because, hearing your story, Max, about how, you didn't necessarily have, whether it's a pastor or the youth leader who can, you've just become a Christian, they could pull you along and walk with you. It's like, man, you really were discipled by the Holy Spirit and His Word. This is why AC does what we do. This is why we want to make the content we make at a caliber that we can make. Because you think about someone like a Max. Think about someone like yourself who's going to school for filmmaking, who wants to do excellent art. If our pursuit as an organization and our churches isn't excellent, you're hard pressed to think that people are going to want to interact with you, right? And so you have someone online who's looking for content to answer these deep questions. It's like, this is why AC exists, right? To make His name known, to truly live out the mandate that's on our shirt, love God and love people. But one of the ways you do that is you got to have sharp hooks. You got to be prepared. And so at this point, I would love to ask you, I mean, we got some different projects and things coming up. And as newly part of AC, what's something that you're really looking forward to doing?
Well, I mean, I'm still pretty new here, so I'm still figuring out things every day that are happening and projects that are coming up. I would say the thing that I'm most excited for is, since I was, on the other side of things, listening to the podcast, going to the conferences, experiencing all of this content, I'm really excited to be able to, be a part of that and to give the thing that God's given me passion for, which is filmmaking and creating and being creative, being able to use that to impact somebody else who is like along that part in their story. It's amazing that I've been given the opportunity to be involved in something that impacted my life so dramatically. Yeah. So that's what I'm most excited for.
Yeah. Yeah. Listeners, Max is actually going to be, working with us on some of the projects we got coming up. You guys have kind of heard about the Can I Trust the Bible, and while Max isn't filming that, he's going to be helping us kind of get it over the finish line. He's actively helping us with our YouTube, and if you haven't noticed already, the YouTube game has gone way up. The editing that he's been doing for the video podcast has been incredible, and especially for someone like myself who, before you came, was trying to figure it out, was trying to learn, but it was not my natural gifting. So having Max be here to really help us elevate our game in that area. But also in May, we're going to be shooting another video series where we're actually going to be going to Malawi, and Max will be joining us for that. At least that's the plan, for him to join us. And we're going to be going there to film this project. Basically, we were given grant funding to head to Malawi to film a video on the subject of technology and theology. And, I will say this, there's going to be more information coming out, but there's actually going to be the opportunity for some of you, that's right, you, to actually join us on that trip, because we're looking at some really cool opportunities in ways where we kind of infuse the leadership summit during that time. And so there's going to be more information, more clarity about that, but I just want to drop that little gem for you guys to be paying attention, because it's going to be really cool. I'm really, really looking forward to it. And so, Max, hearing you say that some of your favorite film style is that raw, uncut, like just go and watch the story develop and capture these candid moments, it speaks to just how God will align things, because that's the type of person you need in those spaces, in those areas. So we'll be continuing to pray for you, man. That's really cool. Just hearing how God has been, changing your life, working in your life. And I know for us at AC, we are so blessed to have you be a part of this team, and, not just for your filmmaking ability, as we're continuing to learn more about your story. And I'm grateful to be able to hear different worldviews, different backgrounds from people. You were saying you were, like, you're half Japanese or
Quarter Japanese.
You're quarter Japanese. Half. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Very cool. Has that played any role in? Because last year we were doing a series on identity, and I know for myself, I may not be. I'm fully Jamaican, but I'm a Jamaican who was raised in a white household, and I know there was a lot of identity components that I really had to wrestle with. I remember there's periods of time where I was thinking, I'm like, am I supposed to be Rasta because I'm Jamaican? I remember being young and thinking that, and how much of my identity was rooted in really my blackness, and how that even when it came to the arts world. Okay, I'm a black man. I guess people think I'm supposed to be a rapper or a basketball player or whatever. And me just realizing that I'm a soccer player, and it just so happens that as much as I do hip hop, I'm a worshiper. That's what I love to do. But was there any periods of time for you where it's like, okay, I'm a quarter Japanese, and how does this affect my Christian worldview?
I would say, growing up, I never really had any kind of identity. Like,
interesting.
Our household was very just kind of business, I never thought about who I was as a person really ever.
Interesting.
Like the only Japanese things I can remember from my childhood is, being with my grandpa who's Japanese. And then I did karate for 7 years.
Yeah.
And so that was all of the Japanese in my life. And I liked sushi. So, but yeah, I would say more so the biggest thing in my life was I didn't really have an identity. Being Canadian, it also is an interesting conversation. Like, what does it mean to be a Canadian? Most people would say that it's a melting pot of culture, but it's like being Canadian doesn't necessarily have an identity by itself. Mm-hmm. And so growing up, looking around the world and thinking about, like, who am I? What is my place in this world? I couldn't really identify with anything. If anything, I felt like an observer most of the time. And so it wasn't even until I became a Christian that I even thought about my identity for the first time, because then I'm now getting told that my identity is in Christ. That's who I am as a person, and that's everything you really need to know about me at this point.
That's, man, that's so cool. Like that is just, That's really, really cool, man. To go from not even considering identity to then being told, you know, who you belong to, you know, belonging to Christ. That's why are we getting the thumbs down? Keep that in the edit, please. Apple doesn't think that Max should have an identity in Christ. I don't know what happened there, but Max, thank you so much for joining us this week on the AC podcast. It's funny because the two guys who edit the podcast are now on it right now. So we're going to make this look amazing for you guys. Make it look and sound amazing for you guys. But truly, Max, I want you to know from myself and to all of us at AC, we're super grateful to have you, and we're excited for the future working in film with you, but also just seeing what these apologetics conversations do for you and what you have to bring to the table in those conversations as you are helping us unpack stories. And so I pray that you would know that you are truly valued, and I'm sure that our AC viewers and listeners are appreciative of you, even if they've been wondering, like, why does the video look better? Well, it's because of this guy right here. So thank you, Max, for joining us on the AC podcast. If you wanted people to potentially connect with you, or if I don't know if you have any of your own personal work that you've done where people could go watch one of your films at all, where would people go?
That's all on my YouTube channel, just under Max Chadwick. But honestly, the easiest way to get a hold of me is probably through Instagram. That's
nice.
That's my main method of communication, because a lot of the time my phone doesn't work. So
okay.
That's the best way.
And what is your Instagram?
My Instagram is just Maxwell Chadwick, which is my name.
Set.
So you can find me
easy,
there.
simple.
Yeah.
It's not like mine that are two completely different. Neither have only one has my name in it. Hey guys, Troy here from AC, and I just dropped in real quick to let you know that the Reach Canada giving campaign was successful. That's right, you helped us raise $200,000. We did it. We're so glad that we were able to do this with you, because honestly, we couldn't do it any other way. We're so grateful for those of you that have decided to give into AC, who have been praying for us, and ultimately trusting us with your resources. Make sure you stay in the loop with everything we got coming up at AC by heading to our website at apologeticscanada.com. Listeners, thank you so much for joining us on the AC podcast. Make sure to like and subscribe on all your favorite streaming platforms as well as on YouTube. But make sure to tune in next week when we find more things to think about. And as always, you know the drill, you know the motto. Love God, love people. Bye for now.